Alright, so today got the Subaru Type RA block, the STI block, all finished up, and we're gonna be throwing it back in the STI. So let's get into it. Alright, so I already went ahead and put the throw bearing on. I didn't show you guys in the last video. It's pretty simple. You just slide it on, put the pin in for the clutch fork, and make sure it's also on the throw bearing right there, as you can see. Went ahead and did that, and I also went ahead and just put in the spark plugs. As you can see, I still gotta tighten them down, but just put them in there for now. And it was missing a few hose clamps. This hose needed to be replaced. Put some hose clamps on there, little things here and there. And for spark plugs, I used the BKR 7Es, I think they were, the Heat Range 7. And so these are copper, just for the break-in. And then once he's going up for a dyno tune, we're gonna switch him to the iridiums, just because the coppers don't last as long. But since replaced the spark plugs before the dyno anyways, went ahead and used the copper ones just for now for the break-in until we go and do the dyno. We'll switch them out before then. And now we're just gonna go ahead and see how easy this thing drops in. It should drop in relatively smooth. Another thing is you always wanna put some grease on the splines there. Helps it slide in, and it's good for when the engine's in, have a little grease on the splines. So I'm gonna go ahead and see. Hopefully this thing lines up and goes in really easy. It should, they usually do. I'm gonna see how it goes. All right, so as you can see, got the engine in, got some of the bolts started for it right here, got it over here. Still got to suck in the gap, just tighten the bolts, but the dowel pins are in, the clutch is lined up with the splines on the input shaft on the tranny, all that stuff. And just so you guys know, I forgot to add this, but also I did go ahead and put the ignition coils in. I forgot to mention that. And also I used a jack to jack up on the transmission to put it up at an angle kind of like this. Makes the the engine go in to the tranny much easier. So now I'm gonna go ahead, tighten all those bolts up, and go from there. All right, so as you can see, the engine is finally off the crane. It's all bolted to the tranny. The engine mounts lined up. Still gotta tighten the bolts on there, but just went ahead as well. Made sure the slave cylinder was on the clutch fork. And I just tested the clutch out by rolling it back and forth with it engaged and then in gear and disengaged in gear, and it works. So just wanted to make sure that before I put everything on, and the clutch doesn't work for some reason. So that's a good thing. Next thing I'm gonna do as well is put this mount on the tranny and then tighten those engine mounts and then go from there. All right, so we just went ahead and got the mount tightened up for the transmission right here. Also went ahead, got all the bell housing bolts tightened up. You can see they're all in, tightened up. Also got the starter in, everything's connected, the signal wire, power wire, and the bracket for the grounds up there. And we also got the engine mounts, all the nuts tightened up on that. So now I think what I'm gonna go ahead and do is put the headers on. All right, so as you can see, went ahead, got the headers bolted on, and also the up pipe. You can see it up there, and comes up here. Got the new gasket on. Still gonna put the bolt in right there and right there, and then we can go ahead, put the turbo on. All right, so we got the bracket tightened down onto the up pipe, got this bolt in, this one, and that one's all tightened up now. So the up pipe is all bolted up, same with the headers, and now we can go ahead and throw the stock turbo on. And if you didn't see my previous videos, this is a stock turbo. It was rebuilt, refurbished, and it has a billet compressor wheel as well. So it's a little bit upgraded from the factory ones. Hopefully ends up lasting. It should. we're not gonna be pushing this car too hard. Just gotta tighten up these bolts. I do have a gasket I gotta put in there, tighten these bolts up, these fittings, and then should be able to just place this thing right down onto the up pipe. All right, we got the little fitting here tightened down, the new gasket in there, and we got new crush washers, and these are tightened down as well. And now we can go ahead, take this, pretty much just drop it down onto the up pipe. Also, another thing I forgot to mention was I always put never sees on all these exhaust studs because they rust super quickly and they're a pain in the ass if you don't do that to get off. So make sure you do that. I always do it. All right, so we got the turbo all tightened up, the bolt right there, one right there, and then one on this side right here. And you also want to make sure you get that hose right there, down in there, on as well. I believe that's the oil drain. And now I'm just gonna put this oil feed onto that, and then we can get started on the basically the top of the engine. So the intake manifold, all the wiring, all the vacuum lines, all that stuff, and then go from there. All right, so now that the turbo is all set, it's all tightened down and all that, also went ahead and put the little bolt in for the oil stick, and had to tighten up a few other little bolts here and there. But now we can go ahead and put the intake manifold on. As you can see, got the gaskets. So this side I already went ahead and did it. You gotta put these little pins in. I took them off the old cylinder head, put them on. That way it holds the gasket in place, so it lines up when you put the intake manifold on. Still got to put it in on this side, as you can see. Got the 2 pins, and it's pretty easy to do. Just pretty much take it, and then just go ahead, put it right on there. And you can just barely tap it with a hammer. It should slide right in, no problem. Once you do that, you can go ahead, take that intake manifold, and finally put it back on the car. All right, I just thought I'd add this. So as I'm going and installing parts, I gotta clean it out of all the old metal and all the stuff we're reusing with all the old chunks of metal in there and stuff like that. And just thought I'd show you guys what it looks like on the inside here of the intake manifold. So as you can see, there is a bunch of metal in there. Got a little chunk down there, whole bunch of stuff. Not good, so I gotta make sure I get every little speck of metal out of there. Definitely causes some problems when we go to start this thing up. Alright, so we just went ahead, hosed the intake manifold off outside. Now we just got it sit in front of the here, dry off. I think I am gonna let it sit overnight to make sure that it's completely dried out, no water left in it. And I think I'm gonna pull the TGVs off too. I got new gaskets anyways, so I'm gonna pull those off, the fuel rails, whatever. Make sure there's nothing else in there. Really want to be sure about that, because you don't want to start this thing up and have metal stuck in there I didn't see and cause some problems for us. So I'm gonna go ahead, wait till that thing completely dries out, and go from there. All right, so it's the next day here now, and I just went ahead and placed the intake manifold on top of the engine. Nothing is bolted in yet, as you can see. Still have to attach everything, but first thing I'm gonna do is put the 4 bolts onto each side and mount the intake manifold onto the cylinder head. So let's get that done. All right, so as you can see, went ahead, got the intake manifold on, and we started putting some of the connectors on as well. So you got the crankshaft position sensor on, this sensor, we've got all the sensors clipped back in, the ones down here for the cam position sensors, the ABCS sensors, got a few vacuum lines, got this piece on that the vacuum line's running to the turbo and the wastegate, and a few other lines. And yeah, we got them all tightened up, and now we're gonna go ahead and throw this back on. Now we do also have, we will be pulling this probably off again, because we do have a boost controller right here. We do have a boost controller, cob boost controller. We are going to be putting on, but we're going to go ahead and get everything back on the car first before we go ahead and install that. All right, so we also got the all these vacuum hoses all set up now. Got the connectors in, and we're going to go ahead, put the power steering pump back on. And I also forgot to mention, I went ahead and all these lines on as well. Got this on, got a few different things on, but also you want to make sure you connect the coolant lines to the throttle body, one down here and the other one up here. Make sure those are on, and I think we're all set to go ahead and throw the power steering pump on and go from there. Alright, so for the power steering pump, it's pretty simple on how we put it on. So we just had it out of the way on the side so we didn't have to drain it all out. So it's ready to get back on now. And the bolt right here, bolt right here, and bolt right here. And that's pretty much it. Bolt it all up and get the power steering pump done. Alright, so as you can see, got the power steering pump on. It's all bolted up. And now we're going to put these brackets on for the AC compressor and the alternator. So this one goes right here, that one goes in this bowl hole, kind of sits like this, just like that, and then this one goes sideways like this, goes into those two bolts, sits right there, and then there's a bolt down here as well, that one. So I'm just going to go ahead and bolt all those brackets up, and then we can throw the AC compressor on. Alright, as you can see, got the AC compressor bracket on, and then to put the AC compressor on there, what I'm going to go ahead and do is take this other bracket, and it goes down on the bottom where those two bolts are. Alright, so what we're going to do is you put this bracket, you slide the two bottom bolts that go on the AC compressor through the bracket and the AC compressor. They don't get threaded in because they thread into this bracket, but since the bolts are so long, you won't be able to put them in, because at least this back one, because the intake manifold will be in the way when you go to put the bolt in. So you gotta slide them in there like that, and then you can basically just pick the AC compressor up and put it right here all in one piece, and then bolt down the bracket and screw in the bottom bolts, and then we got the top two bolts as well that we also gotta put in, and then the AC compressor will be all set. Alright, so got the AC compressor on now. It's all tightened up. You gotta make sure, like I said earlier, you have these two back bolts for the AC compressor already slid through before you put the AC compressor on, or else you can't get them to fit back here. And I had this one slid through as well. And yeah, now we can go ahead, put the alternator on. Alright, so now that we got the AC compressor on, the power steering pump, the last piece for the front is the alternator. So it just goes in between the two, just like that. So I'm going to show you guys how to put this on now. So this is pretty simple to do. It's just got two bolts, one right here, one right here. This one goes for the manual tensioner. You should put the bolt through there, line it up with the alternator hole, put it in, and then for this one, just line it up with this one on the AC compressor mount and just slide it in, put the bolt through, and then you can go ahead and attach the connectors. Alright, so once you get the alternator on, do not tighten it because you still have to put the belts on. And this one has the manual tensioner, so you just slide it up and down, put the belt on. Once you do that, you can adjust it and then tighten it on. We're going to put the AC compressor belt on first though, and those are usually a pain. So hopefully it goes on easy. We're going to see. Alright, so we went ahead and got new belts on, and this one is a pain. There's no tensioner for it, so you can basically use screwdrivers and these little belt stretcher tools. Eventually it'll go on, and then you can go ahead and put this one on, tighten the tensioner bolt, tighten the alternator up, and I also went ahead and put on the diverter valve, or blow-off valve, whatever you want to call it. Forgot to put that on earlier, and now I think I'm going to go ahead and put on the radiator. Alright, so we got the radiator right here. Pretty much just pick it up and drop it right in. Then we can go ahead, connect all the hoses, and put the brackets on. Alright, so got the radiator all hooked up now. All the hoses are clamped on. Got the two up there, got this one, got the one down there. Also got the connectors for the fans connected. And now we're going to go ahead and install the new Mishimoto cold air intake. It's going to go right here, so let's see how that thing looks. Should look cool. It'll sound way better now that it's got a bigger aftermarket intake, so let's see how it goes. Alright, so we got the cold air intake all set up. Got the Mishimoto heat shield on there. It's all bolted in. clamped on, and now we're gonna go ahead, put the downpipe on, and after that, we're gonna probably go ahead and install the Cobb boost controller. Should have done this before, but I decided to do it once it was pretty much all done. I thought it would be easier that way once everything's already bolted in and whatnot. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right after, and put the intercooler on and fill it with fluids, and we should be able to finally start this thing. All right, so we went ahead, got the downpipe on, and so I currently do not have a gasket for the back, so I'm gonna go grab one of those. But I'm probably gonna do the first start without it connected to the back, which is fine. Just gonna plug this connector in, and we'll do the first start without that gasket, and then I'll just throw the gasket in later. It's not a big deal. So now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go ahead and set this Cobb boost controller up. So let's get into that. All right, so you're just gonna remove this cover to get to the stock boost controller, undo the connector, and then, so this is a 3-port, so this one goes to the turbo, I believe. This one goes to the wastegate, and then this one goes to this hose right here, the turbo inlet pipe. And since this factory one is a 2-port, I don't know if you guys can see down there, but it basically tees off from here to the wastegate, to the turbo, to the wastegate, and then goes into one line. This one will now be 2 individual lines, so, but the normal turbo inlet pipe is still one line. Another thing is the turbo inlet pipe, the hose, this thing right here, the fitting is too big. If you use the same size hose for this, or this one, as this, luckily, stock boost controller goes from a tiny hose the same size as this to a bigger hose like this, and it comes with an adapter already, so you can basically use this, reuse it, and that way you can run the big hose to the small hose using this adapter to run it to the boost controller. Alright, so as you can see, got this thing all hooked up now. Got the turbo inlet pipe hose on, the turbo hose on as well, and the wastegate hose is on as well. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and like 3M tape it like this, and then go ahead and bolt this bracket down, and then we can throw the intercooler on. All right, so we went ahead, got the intercooler on, and it's pretty simple. Gonna put that hose on, tighten down that hose clamp, put this one on, and you're gonna set the 2 brackets on, and then diverter blow-off valve, and then this has the mounting brackets as well, 2 little bolts for this line. And now that thing's all set, and I'm just gonna go ahead, look over the whole thing, and then make sure everything is good. Then go ahead and put in some braking oil. And for braking oil, what I use is the VR1 2050 for braking, because it has high zinc content in it, which is what you want when you're breaking it in. And I've always had good luck with that, so I'm gonna stick to that. I'm just gonna go ahead, and I believe this takes 6.3 quarts now because it has the Killer Bee oil pan on it, the bigger oil pan. So we're gonna go ahead, put 6.3 quarts of oil in it, and go ahead and put some coolant in it as well, and go from there. One thing I just remembered is I never put these fuel hoses on, so go ahead and put those on. All right, now we can go ahead, put the battery in, and I will have to load on the new tune with the Cobb access port onto the car. All right, so we got the battery hooked up, and we are currently downloading the new tune onto the car. And while I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and unplug all the ignition coil wires, and also pull the relay or the fuse out for the fuel pump. That way I can crank this thing over, get oil pressure before I actually officially start it. Then once I crank it over a few times, get oil pressure, I'm gonna plug everything back in and see if this thing starts. All right, so for the fuel pump fuse, it is this one right here in the engine compartment. So we can just go ahead, pull that thing out, set it somewhere, put it right there. And then I also went ahead and pulled all the ignition coil plugs out, as you can see down there. So check on the tune right now. It seems to be done. And we've turned the vehicle off. And then once you turn it off, it does this. Turn it on again. Click continue. And just like that, it's all set. Turn it back off and should be all set. All right, now we're gonna try and crank it and basically just to build oil pressure. So let's see. Just do it a few times, cycle the key. And that should be good. All right, now we're gonna go ahead, put the fuel pump fuse back in, connect all the ignition coil plugs, and we're gonna give this thing a start. All right, so I just got everything connected now. I also looked around for any oil leaks since we did crank it. Got the oil circulated, so checked around. Don't see any oil leaks yet, so that's a good thing. And just waiting for my buddy to get down here now because it's his car. He wants to see the first startup on it, so I'm gonna wait till he gets down here and we're gonna see if this thing starts. Fingers crossed. Whenever you're ready. Yep. All right, so we just went ahead and put coolant in it, and we also got the battery strapped down now, and we ended up putting the exhaust together. We're gonna have to wait for an exhaust gas to come in, but it's fine to drive until then, since it's after the downpipe, after the O2 sensors, doesn't matter. It has a slight exhaust leak, but it should be fine. And now I think it's all set. It started, it sounds good. I'm gonna let it idle for a little bit, get that on video. There's no knocking noises, nothing's leaking. Everything looks good, so super hyped about that. And I think we're gonna probably take it out for its first drive. Time to drive her out of the shop finally. Close the door. See how she goes. Finally under its own power. Of course it's snowing today, but it's a good day to break her in, right? Alright, so we're just driving now. Just keeping the RPMs low, making sure it has a lot of engine brake. That's good to brake in the rings. We're not boosting it, nothing like that, just slowly driving. And so far everything's good. I gotta figure out why all these lights are popping up. But other than that, just driving perfect, nothing's leaking. We're gonna go to the shop, check it out. All right, so it's nighttime now, we're just driving around. So far, everything's been good. What do you think, Brett?
Dude, I'm such a proud Subaru owner. I love Subaru. Oh my gosh.
Bro, what?
Sorry, it's hitting me, dude.
Yeah, he's just excited. It'll probably last about 5,000 miles. It's pretty good for a Subaru, and then it needs a new engine.
Yeah.
So, fair enough. But yeah, so that's gonna end it for this video. Super hyped. It's finally back on the road, and peace.